morning. It is NFL Week 15, and we have a packed show here on Bet. We have many guests coming on. We got Sal Powell, Kimberly Martin, Jeff Darlington. I'm Erin Dolan, and this is Eric Moody. And as you guys know, each and every week, we start off with being highly caffeinated. This cup, basically as big as my head. Always bring the silver straw. But Eric, how you doing this morning?
No, things are going great. I know we had NFL and NBA games yesterday. It's like the holidays came early. And you know what, Erin? My wife and I are getting very strategic on where to put this elf on the shelf. I'm kind of running out of ideas here.
Yeah, see, I've seen some very clever elf on the shelves. Now, I'm not married. I don't have any kids, so I can only imagine the things that you guys have to come up with. But nonetheless, do love those things. As a kid, we used to get like little presents around the elves on the shelf. So I'm sure you have to come up with some cool ideas. But let's switch it over to some of the games that are on the slate today for the NFL. Look at how some of these lines have shifted. So starting with Detroit at the Jets, that game was a pick'em. Now up to Jets -2. We'll get into that game, the total dropping there. And as for Dallas and Jacksonville, a lot of people thinking this is a trap game. Dallas moved from -6 to -4 with the total creeping up. Same thing with Atlanta and New Orleans. You got the total coming up and moving to the Saints -4.5. And then Cincy versus Tampa Bay. I can't wait to get into this game because this spread seems way too suspicious for me with that total going from 42 to 46. So let's bring in Jeff Darlington to talk more on this Bengals-Bucs game. And look at him in this look at this sunny air, this weather. Meanwhile, we're freezing, Jeff, or at least I am. How you doing today?
Yeah, no, it's nice to be back in Florida. And by the way, I don't know what you're talking about parents doing things with the elves. The elves have magic, Erin. And they come and go as they please, okay? It has nothing to do with parents.
Sorry, Jeff. I just wasn't sure if, young kids are watching a bet cast since they can't, place bets or anything. Hopefully they're not tuned into this one. If not, there'd be some issues and some legal issues.
You gotta start young, Erin.
Yeah. You gotta watch your mouth with that one. All right, so, Jeff, the Bengals are one of the hottest teams right now. They've won 5 straight after a slow start, but at least 3 starters might be sitting out today. Can you give us an injury update on some of the top players like Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins?
Yeah, the good news is that the Bengals do believe that T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd will be able to play in this game. And that means that this will be a team with an offensive wide receiver unit that is as healthy as it's been all season long. Joe Burrow saying that he believes this offense can get to another level, and this could be the week that he does it, especially if he can get more explosive plays out of those players. So you can expect a full arsenal of weaponry for this Bengals offense.
Great stuff, Jeff. So let's talk about the Bucs. They've lost 2 of their last 3, and they're also injury-riddled. Now, but they still lead the NFC South. So they finished the game against the 49ers last week with just 5 starters on defense. So what names can you update us on from the Bucs injury report?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's sort of where we look at this game as being a bit lopsided. I know we want to talk about Tom Brady all the time, but the Bengals offense, which I just referenced, up against a Bucs defense that is still riddled with injuries. They're not going to have Vita Vea on the field. Carl Nassib will not be able to play. Todd Bowles saying that they are extremely thin on the edge, and also now in the defensive backfield. Antoine Winfield, there is a possibility, in fact, a good possibility he will play despite an ankle injury that limited him in practice this week. But still, this defense is banged up. I mentioned the Bengals offense. I know that this Bucs team still has a lot to play for, but when you do look at the matchups just objectively, it is going to be a tough day for the Bucs to get the momentum that they're looking for.
I agree with you. I actually think it's going to be a really tough day for them, but in terms of that spread, not making a whole lot of sense. Jeff Darlington, thanks so much for joining Bet this morning. Enjoy the sunny weather.
Thanks, Erin.
All right, Eric, let's break this game down. So right now we got Cincy laying 3.5 with that total at 46. Are you daring to play the spread? Are you looking at the total or player props today?
Yeah, I'm staying away from the spread on this one, so I am looking at a player prop. So I do love Joe Mixon in this game to go over rushing yards. And so I just see Mixon in the Bengals running game having a lot of success against a Buccaneers defensive front that actually ranks 19th in run stop win rate. Now, the Bengals offensive line, they got off to a rough start this season. It does take time at that position for things to gel and come together. But now as we enter Week 15, they actually rank in the top 10 in run block win rate, according to ESPN Stats and Info, some of our metrics. Now, one thing about Mixon, I know he's kind of been banged up. He's dealt with the concussion, missed some time. But he's had 7 games this season where he's had 14 or more rushing attempts. Now, in those games, he's averaged 83.5 rushing yards per game. And this Bengals offense is well equipped to dominate the time of possession in this game. The Buccaneers offense unfortunately put their defense in a bind with how poorly they're playing on offense, so they're on the field a ton. And so I just see the Bengals just continuing, I would say, to pound and wear this defense down. So I think that bodes really well for Joe Mixon in the running game. I think he's going to get a huge workload, accumulate a ton of rushing yards. So I'd bet the over on rushing yards for Mr. Joe Mixon.
And Eric, great minds think alike. That's one of my favorite props for this game. But before we get into that, let me talk about this spread because I gave this out on SportsCenter this morning as my Erin on the side of caution. The reason being, this line has stayed at Cincy -3.5 despite 80% of the tickets and 90% of the money on Caesars Sportsbook on Cincy to cover in this one. And if you look at both these teams, you have the best team in terms of covering going against the worst team in terms of covering for the entire season. Cincy, in the last 11 games, have covered 10 of those. Tampa Bay, meanwhile, in that same stretch, 1-9-1 against the spread. So why in the world is this line not moving out? Why is it not moving at all? Not even like a little bit. Just go up to -4, come back down. It makes no sense to me, so I'm staying away from the spread. I do agree with you that Joe Mixon will get a good workload in this one. He's coming off a 96 rushing yard performance over the Browns, and we just saw this Bucs defense last week. They gave up 119 rushing yards to Christian McCaffrey, so Joe Mixon should have a good game. I do think they'll lean on him in this one, and that I should say is the one way that I'm going to play this matchup. Let's also talk about another line that it doesn't feel fishy to me. I'm just surprised that people are betting on Zach Wilson, and that line is creeping up to -2 for the Jets. But let's throw it over to Sal Powell and bring him in to talk about this Lions-Jets matchup. Sal Powell, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Great day here at MetLife Stadium. Critical game for both these football teams.
Yes, it is. And let's talk about the Lions. So they're 5-1 in their last 6 games. They tend to put up a ton of points. That's the one thing about this team. They're very feisty. But the Jets, they're the 3rd best defense in the NFL. How are the Detroit Lions going to keep this offense humming?
Well, the critical number for the Lions covered 6 straight, which is the longest current streak in the NFL in that category. So, they're doing it with their high-powered offense. The Jets defense, they've got 2 great cover corners in DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner that have shut some people down. But we just heard from Adam Schefter reporting that Quinnen Williams, with that calf injury, their best defensive lineman, the guy who gives them push up the middle, not playing in this game. And there's a question about LaMarcus Joyner, their all-world safety on the back end, also not playing in this game. We'll get the injury report here in about 25 minutes. So they've got some injuries on defense, the Jets, that could hurt them in this football game.
Great stuff, Sal. So let's talk about Mike White. So you cannot find a doctor to clear him for contact after he's dealing with some banged up ribs. So the Jets are forced to turn back to Zach Wilson. So how much did the change at quarterback alter their game plan for this week?
Yeah, back to Zach, or as the New York Post headline was this morning, Zach from the dead. I love that headline. That was a good one. The bottom line is, and when I talked to Robert Saleh this morning, the bottom line is that, Zach Wilson has to take the reset of what he learned in the last 3 weeks, mainly on his mechanics, get the feet set, get the body and the arm and the eyes going in the same direction. None of that Bernie Kosar stuff that we saw against the New England Patriots. No sidearm throws, no off the back foot. He's got to move the chains, be accurate with the football, and that comes down to Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, setting the tone with a running game. The Lions are 26th in run defense. You can run on the Lions if you choose to run on the Lions. Volume and production in the running game will do 2 things. 1, keep Zach Wilson on schedule now that he's back in the starting lineup. Number 2, keep the Lions offense off the football field. You don't want the Lions on the field all game long, racking up first downs, racking up points like they did last week against the Minnesota Vikings, because, that offensive line on the Lions, they gave up only 1 pressure last week. So, they've been protecting Jared Goff. And this is a game that sets up nicely for Jared Goff if the Jets give them offensive opportunities by going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and losing the time of possession. Run the football in this game. Got to do it.
That's a great way to look at this game, especially because Zach Wilson, his completion percentage is 56%, which is the worst in the league in the games that he has played so far this season. Absolutely not good. Well, thank you, Sal Pal, for joining Bet this morning and for dropping that Lions nugget at the top there. All right, Eric, let's get into this game. So currently the Jets are laying 2. This opened as a pick'em, and that totals at 43.5. Do you expect this to be a low-scoring affair, especially if they're able to just run the ball and try to keep the Detroit Lions off the field?
Yeah, no, I agree, Erin. I really don't expect it to be a high-scoring game. There is a player prop that I do like in this game, and it's actually tied to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I know what people may be thinking. We know the Jets secondary, they've allowed the 3rd fewest passing yards per game to opponents. You got Sauce Gardner that's in the midst of a great season. You got DJ Reed. Like, this duo is shut down outside wide receivers. But when we look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, he's got a significant advantage against slot cornerback Michael Carter of the Jets. And so I think that's an area of the field that Jared Goff and the Lions should want to target, because you look at this Jets team, their pass rush, they rank 10th in pass rush win rate. And because of that, I think it will be wise for Goff to lean heavily on the quick passing game. And that obviously benefits someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just get the ball in his hands, let him accumulate yards after the catch. And one thing about St. Brown, he should see a ton of targets in this game. In 5 straight games, St. Brown has had at least 8 targets and 6 receptions. To bet on this game, I would bet on Amon-Ra St. Brown to go over 6.5 receptions.
I like that. I'm going to go with Detroit on the money line. Now, I know for the Jets, they have a better defense, and they're thinking they're going to be able to limit Jared Goff, especially in these cold temperatures. But let me tell you something. Zach Wilson is such a step down from Mike White. Yes, he has a 5-2 record, but I talked about that completion percentage at 56%. The only other quarterback with a completion rate less than 60% is Baker Mayfield, okay? Zach Wilson is a terrible quarterback. Even if they are able to run the ball, I do think that if this game becomes a shootout, the Detroit Lions are going to win, because the Jets have lost 3 of the last 4 games. In those 3 games, they've been 1-score games. The Detroit Lions, again, you do not want to get into a shootout with them because they will score. In fact, they're ranked 1st in red zone efficiency. So again, I think the Detroit Lions somehow, some way will end up winning this one. I'd rather take them outright in this game. That was one of the best bets, or one of my favorite bets, I should say, that I gave out on Daily Wager. All right, let's also talk about another divisional matchup. All right, we got right now the Giants and the Commanders, and we're going to bring in Kimberly Martin to talk more on this game. Kimberly, the Giants, they have not won in a month. The last time these two teams met, it resulted in a tie in Week 13. So how have the Giants, who started 6-1, had all this trouble throughout the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, hey, Erin, despite the losses that have piled up, the Giants are still confident. And part of the reason is that Saquon Barkley told me the focus has to be on us doing the little things. He's like, even when we get blown out, like when we played the Eagles and got our butts whooped, he said it was the little things. If we just focus on our fundamentals, get back to basics, because we have the talent. We just need to be locked in on the basics. But also, think about this team, the injuries, like continuity and consistency is their biggest issue. It is hard to do that when guys are injured up and down this roster. Even looking at their wide receivers, Sterling Shepard, ACL, Wan'Dale Robinson. You had Richie James miss a game with a concussion. Even Galladay, they just don't have consistency in a lot of these position groups. And even on the offensive line, guys have been injured. So they are still confident. Saquon told me, we feel good. We've had a great week of practice, and you can see the energy is high. We know that we have the weapons, even though we haven't racked up the wins of late. They expect that to change tonight.
All right, Kimberly, so on the other side, we've got the Commanders, who have seemed to have found something on offense. They're actually 6-1-1 in their last 8 games. So what did the Commanders say has fueled their turnaround?
That something is Taylor Heineke. I mean, think about it. This looks like a different team with Taylor running the offense. You could say what you want about him as a player, whether you think he's that great or whatever, but these guys, they buy in. They play with a gutsiness, a grit, and it helps when he's willing to do whatever it takes to get those extra yards. And when you have a guy, Terry Scary McLaurin, that he knows, Taylor told me, I know I can just chuck it down the field. Terry will get it. And when you look at that defense, they're just monsters up and down that defensive line. That they have the pieces. That's why even though Carson Wentz got hurt and you bring in Taylor Heineke, they didn't lose a step. In fact, they got better. Everything seems to be moving and gelling, and that's why that tie And that loss to the Vikings, that very close loss to the Vikings, still eats at them because they feel like those are games they definitely let slip away.
And Kimberly, you make a great point about the team getting even better with Taylor Heineke stepping under center. As an Eagles fan, I kind of know why that is the case there. So, Kimberly, thanks so much for joining Bet this morning. Looking forward to your coverage.
Thanks.
All right, Eric, let's get into our picks for this game. So, Washington is now laying 4.5 with that total at 40.5. Side total player prop. Just give it to me.
I like a player prop in this one. I'm chuckling because I know you're an Eagles fan, so I apologize in advance. But I do like Terry McLaurin in this matchup to go over receiving yards. It's like the line is set at 61.5, and I even like McLaurin as an anytime touchdown scorer. That's actually at plus odds on Caesars as well. So let's rewind the clock. 2 weeks ago, you look at McLaurin. I'm like, he caught 8 of 12 targets for 105 receiving yards and a touchdown against the Giants. And he's averaged 7.5 targets and 72.7 receiving yards per game this season. And so against the Giants in his career, I'm like, McLaurin has been phenomenal. I'm like, he's averaged 96.7 receiving yards per game in 6 games against them in his career. He's actually scored touchdowns in 3 of those games. And so the Giants secondary, at least in my opinion, coming into this season, was a huge concern. And that concern is still there heading towards the latter part of the season because they've dealt with a lot of injuries. And so the stage is being set for Scary Terry to have a monster game. So I would bet over receiving yards and also bet on him as a anytime touchdown scorer, Erin.
I like it. I'm going to go Brian Robinson over 64.5 rushing yards. So he ran 21 times for 96 rushing yards against the same defense that he just faced. On top of that, the Giants just gave up a ton of yards against the Philadelphia Eagles. In fact, 253 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, I will say that Robinson was limited this week, but he did return back to practice on Friday, and the Giants' defense is ranked 29th against the run. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to run the rock and Brian Robinson hits over his rushing yards prop. Now, let's switch it over to our next segment, one of our favorites, Little Dog, Big Dog. And last week, Eric, we crushed it. We both had the same big dog. We had the Ravens at +3. I decided to go with the Ravens again yesterday, but that didn't work out for me. So let's try to get another winner. Do you have a little dog, small dog for me this week?
Yeah, I guess I have a little dog. You know, I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers here at the +3. And I know the Panthers have leaned heavily on the run under interim head coach Steve Wilks. Now you got Sam Darnold under center, and they're continuing to double down on the running game. And I know what some people may be thinking. You're like, okay, the Steelers defense, they've had trouble stopping the run, and that is correct. They rank 29th in run stop win rate. But I do feel the Steelers pass rush could give Sam Darnold and the Panthers trouble in this game. I'm not really worried about Mitch Trubisky under center. I'm like, it's not that big of an upgrade or downgrade when they have Kenny Pickett underneath center. Plus, Trubisky does have experience. But it really boils down to bring all that together to Mike Tomlin. When he's an underdog, he performs well. This team is actually 50-29 against the spread when the Steelers are an underdog. So I'm backing the Steelers here. I believe they can get an outright win or keep this game close, Erin.
All right, I like it. Mike Tomlin always talking about December football and how that's different. I'm going to go with a little dog in the Detroit Lions. Everybody talking about this matchup was a pick 'em. It's now Detroit +2. Now, I told you that I liked an outright, and I do like that. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I would still take the points. Dow Powell mentioned it. They've covered 6 straight, longest active streak right now in the NFL. I don't believe in the Jets putting up points. That is the issue. They should be able to put up points against the Detroit Lions defense, but does that mean they will when they're ranked 25th in red zone efficiency, going against a Lions team that's ranked 1st in red zone efficiency? I told you don't want this to become a shootout whatsoever. And a lot of people thinking, is Zach Wilson back from the dead? Is he back from the dead? Have we forgotten what we saw? Do we think he is a tough individual? Do you think he's going to come out firing in this game? Please, not going to happen. Also, for what it's worth, look at Garrett Wilson under receiving yards. You know those two definitely have beef, whether you want to admit it or not. Nonetheless, that is my small dog for this week, Lions +2. Eric, chill out for a little bit. We're going to bring in another guest. We're going to bring in Tyler Fulghum to talk more on some of these games. Tyler, good morning from Vegas. How you feeling?
Feeling good, Erin. Ready to rock and roll?
Odd. I had this weird dream the other night that I had a one-way ticket overnight, skipped work, and went to the Adele concert. Have you gone yet in Vegas? I've been dying to go.
Yeah, I have not, but it's literally at Caesars right across from our studio, so I see the marquee with Adele always. Come on out, Erin.
I would go by myself, but yeah,
we can
we'll
find
get
some tickets, I'm sure.
They're very expensive. We'd have to hit a parlay in the casino and then go to see Adele. But all right, let's get into some of these games. Titans versus Chargers. Chargers laying laying 3 points with that total of 46.5. How you playing this one?
Yeah, I'm going to back my Chargers. You know, I'm a Chargers honk, and I want them to get into the postseason. I need them to get into the postseason, and a win here would help in that regard. It is dangerous backing the Chargers, but I like this spot for L.A. Tennessee's got to come there. Their defense is wrecked by injury. All kinds of injuries in the secondary. They're really top-notch linebacker David Long is out. So there is a pass funnel defense sitting there right for the picking for Justin Herbert. Tennessee's good against the run, but we know that what Justin Herbert and the Chargers like to do is drop back and pass. 47, and 51 pass attempts in his last 3 games. Now that he's got Mike Williams healthy with Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer, plus the best receiving back in the NFL by far in Austin Eckler, I think Herbert throws the ball all over SoFi today and leads the Chargers to a win and a cover. But, of course, it's always dangerous back in the Chargers when you think they're ready to turn a corner. And Derrick Henry, against that awful Chargers run defense, is on the other side.
I like it. All right, let's also talk about the Cowboys-Jags game. A lot of people thinking this is a trap game. The Dallas Cowboys are on potential upset alert because they're playing Philly next week. They're not going to be paying attention in this game. I don't believe that to be true. But nonetheless, the Cowboys are laying 4, that total of 47.5. How are you playing this one?
Yeah, I like the Jags. I like the Jags, who are 3-0. ATS is a home dog this season. They are really good in this spot. It's over a field goal. Dallas obviously is very good, but we saw last week they kind of slept walk or took for granted, or were looking ahead against the Texans. Almost lost that game outright to Houston. Dallas can get after the quarterback. We know that. But Trevor Lawrence is balling right now. Ed Werder, live shot on Daily Wager from Duval County this morning, told us Trevor Lawrence has thrown 192 consecutive passes without an interception. In his last, 4 or 5 games, he's got 10 touchdowns, 0 picks. He's playing the best football of his career right now, and this is a stern test against Dallas. But on the other side, Dak Prescott has been a turnover machine. He's got 9 picks, I believe, in his last 8 games. So will those trends continue? Will Dak keep turning the ball over? Or does he kind of settle down and have a clean game? And does Trevor Lawrence finally throw a pick or 2 or turn the ball over for the first time in a long time against Dallas? I think we see the Trevor Lawrence trend continue of good ball. I think Jacksonville's defense shows up, and I don't know if they, turn over Dak Prescott, but I think they'll get after him. I think this is a good game. I think it's a compelling game. I think it's a close game. That's why I'm going to take Jacksonville at home +4.
Yeah, you talk about this being a compelling game with all the narratives around Dak Prescott. Is going to turn it over, but the Jags, I feel like they're just one of those teams that aren't sexy on TV that we talk about all the time, so you don't even realize how good Trevor Lawrence has been over the last couple of weeks. One other game that is on the slate that is just, again, my Erin on the side of caution. We got Cincy versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay right now getting 3.5 points. That total at 46. Which way are you playing it?
Yeah, I don't blame you for exercising caution with this particular game, because you have Tampa Bay, in desperate need of a win, kind of. We'll see what Carolina does. Catching more than a field goal at home. Tom Brady's excelled in his career in this spot, but we know the Bucs are 1-9-1 ATS the last 11 games. Meanwhile, the Bengals, all they're doing is covering 10-1 ATS their last 11 games. So it's a pros versus Joes here situation. The public and the Joes love Cincinnati because what they've done this year. The Sharps, though, keep backing Tampa Bay. That hasn't worked. They're going back here again. I'll lean to the public side. I'll lean to the Joes, the Fortenbaugh of the world, because I just think Cincinnati is a better team. I think I've underestimated their defense, and it looks like Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins will be available alongside Jamar Chase for Joe Burrow. Maybe I like the over more than anything as well. It's kind of coming up. I think it was 45.5. I see 46 now here, and both these teams like to throw the football a lot, so that could increase play volume and, of course, the probability of explosive plays. But, man, it's hard to bet against Cincinnati right now and hard to bet on Tampa Bay. That's why I'll just say Bengals -3.5.
Especially when Cincy is averaging 26 points on offense and Tampa Bay is averaging 17 points on offense, which is ranked 28th. So it just feels like the Bengals should be able to cover this one, but we shall see. All right, we brought back in Eric Moody because now it's time to take it to the bank, and let's look at last week's results. We do have 2 winners on the board. Tyler got there with Baltimore at Pittsburgh with the under. I got there with Miles Sanders. He crushed that number. Eric, it is okay with the team total. I don't know what's going on with the Miami Dolphins. There are a lot of question marks surrounding them because they only scored that 17 points there. But why don't we start off with you, Tyler? You had a winner last week. What do you have this week for Take It to the Bank?
Yeah, I tell you what, Baltimore and Pittsburgh unders are just easy money right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well done on Miles Sanders, who absolutely balled. Aaron, I'm going to go to a player prop this week. I mentioned I like the Chargers, because I think Justin Herbert is going to drop back and slang that thing all over SoFi Stadium. Tennessee, extreme pass funnel defense, elite against the run, terrible against the pass, also injured on the defensive side of the ball in the secondary. So Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert is going to throw to all of them frequently, and I think he'll have a lot of success. So over 39.5 pass attempts for Herbert. He has thrown the ball 47,
Wow.
and 51 times in each of his last 3 games. So we just need 40 here. That's why I like Herbert.
I'm a big proponent of looking at the pass attempts instead of the completions because those seem to hit just quite more in my eyes. But Eric, give me your take it to the bank.
You know what? I'm still reeling from the Dolphins letting me down last week. Like Fredo let down Michael Corleone in The Godfather Part 2. That's how I'm feeling right now. But I am going with Terry McLaurin over receiving yards for my take it to the bank for this week. He's performed very well against the Giants in his career, and he's averaging 72 receiving yards per game this season. So my take it to the bank this week, Terry McLaurin over receiving yards. Let's make some money.
I like it. I'm going to finish this off now with another player prop. I'm going with Jalen Hurts over 47.5 rushing yards against the Chicago Bears. A Bears defense that is not good at stopping the run, in fact, ranked 27th in opponent rushing yards allowed per game. As for Jalen Hurts, he's averaging 53 rushing yards per game this season. He's hit over this mark in 6 times this season. Go back to those 6 games. They were always against teams in which they had a weak run defense. Now, on top of that, I'm an Eagles fan, but I do think this is going to be a closer game than people suspect, which means I think Jalen Hurts will take the game into his own hands, be running the ball all game. I like him over 47.5 rushing yards as my take it to the bank. Now let's bring back in all 3 of us here. Tyler, before we let you go, I know you have an NBA play that you like today.
Yeah, Lakers hosting the Washington Wizards. No Anthony Davis for the Lakers, so I'm going to stay away from the side, which is 4.5. I think we see a high-scoring game. 235.5 is a healthy total, but the Lakers are one of the fastest-paced teams in the NBA, and the Wizards are one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. They also could be getting Bradley Beal back, boosting their offense. So I think we see a lot of possessions. I think we see a lot of scoring on both sides of the basketball. Again, with no Anthony Davis, going to be the LeBron and Russell Westbrook show. And obviously, if Brad Beal is back, that helps that Washington offense. So I'm going to go over 235.5 at Crypto.com Arena this evening. Lakers and the Wiz.
All right, I love it. And anytime you see a total that high, make sure to take a look at some of the player props as well. All right, Tyler, thank you for joining Bet This Morning. Go get some sleep.
Good luck to you guys today with all your bets.
Thank you, thank you. All right, Eric, we'll do a little bit of a before I let you go. Full NBA slate on top of the NFL schedule. Where are you looking today?
Well, it's one player prop that I'm drawn to like a moth to the flame, Aaron, and it is actually Kyrie Irving. Over 33.5 points plus assists plus rebounds.
Ooh.
Now, it's no secret, if you read the daily notes column, I like to target the Pistons, whether it's in betting, NBA DFS, or even when looking for a streamer in fantasy basketball. And the Pistons rank 29th in points allowed per 100 possessions. In Detroit, they've allowed some monster performances to opposing point guards this season. And one thing about Irving, over his last 4 games, he's surpassed 33.5 points, assists, and rebounds. And so I would bet on Irving, over 33.5 par. So that's my NBA bet for today.
I like it. I almost went with Kyrie Irving over a point, so that would have been funny if we both came up with the same thing there. But that's just one of those tricky games in which you're thinking, okay, is the star player not going to end up playing a ton, or is this going to be a closer game and they're going to have to make up all those points, assists, and rebounds? Okay, I'm going with the New York Knicks first half money line. Listen to this trend, 17-11 in the first half in terms of winning outright. The Pacers, meanwhile, 11-19. The New York Knicks, their defense is really good. They're ranked 3rd in opponent field goal percentage, 4th in opponent three-point percentage, and the Pacers are not good in the first half of games. We've known this. They tend to start out slow. The last time these two teams met, you had the Pacers who ended up winning, but the New York Knicks were up by 6 at half. So I am just going to take the New York Knicks first half money line. That's the way I'm going to play that and the way I broke it down. All right, Eric. Well, it's NFL Week 15. The holidays are coming. This has been a great edition of Bet. And don't forget, we'll be back here tomorrow to talk about Monday Night Football and all things. And we'll be here next week on Sunday as well. Make sure to join Eric Moody. Oh, going this way. Eric Moody and I for NFL Week 16. Good luck today, guys.